John, it's wonderful to connect. Thank you, sir, for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
It's so great to be here, Joe. Happy to be
Absolutely.
here with you.
Yeah, this is great. So let's begin our journey into your life and world by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic started. It threw us all into the unknown. There were so many variables. How did you get through that time period, and how much of it has reverberated into your life today that affects the way that you live?
That is such a great question because I had just recently moved in with um, a late in life love, and um, we were cooped up at home, and we looked at each other. We were both working from home. We looked at each other and said, why don't we just pack up the dog, pack up the offices, and drive to somewhere where we can eat outside? And we drove to Savannah, Georgia, and we spent the whole winter there. And then that became a pattern in our life that every winter we've gone somewhere and done that. Like last winter, and Kim hates winter.
Yeah.
Um, so it's always someplace warm, except last winter. She said, I know what you want. You're writing a book. You want to write in the morning. You want to ski in the afternoon. I think we should do that. And I said, oh my God, if we're going to do that, we're going to go to the sunniest place in the world where you can ski every day, and that's Taos, New Mexico. So
Wow.
we drove across the country and spent the winter in Taos, and it was
Wow.
it was glorious. And she actually loved it. She had never been in the high desert, and
Yeah.
so
That's amazing. So right now in
So
2025,
that it started that pattern. The
yeah,
pandemic
and that
started that pattern.
And that's the beauty of it. Yeah, that's the thing about that time period is it had a monopoly on us and you had to choose how you were going to do it. Was the glass half full or was it half empty?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know? And what a great tradition. And there's been so many great stories of people traveling. I think that's the thing. There is
Yeah.
always a way of kind of finding the sunshine in the clouds.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there always is, Joe,
Yeah,
right?
there
Yeah.
is. There absolutely is. So let's get to the brass tacks of what you do here in 2025. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, sixth graders. Career day. The kid in the back of the room is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
I say at this point in my life, what I do is I help people convert their businesses to businesses where everybody owns it and everybody has a stake and everybody has a share. Instead of one boss, there are many.
So isn't the Green Bay Packers kind of like that, don't they? I mean, not exactly like that. Do they have shares? What's an
Yeah.
example of that?
So there are literally millions of employee-owned companies in the world. In this country, there are roughly 6,000 and some very big corporations, but most of them are what's called an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. And there's not necessarily a lot of democracy baked into that system.
Yeah,
It generally is very good for people,
yeah.
but my interest is the worker co-op, where one share, one vote, a truly democratic workplace,
Yeah.
which doesn't mean there's no leadership. In fact, there has to be great leadership, like in any company. What it means is that when it comes to policies and direction, that everybody is charting the course. And when it comes to profits, there's widespread sharing.
Okay.
And, my feeling, Joe, is that in this country, from the 30s to the 70s, um, unions were incredibly successful and they got benefits for people and much higher wages, and working people were brought along. Um, in the 1970s, when that started to fade out, at that time, the average CEO in this country made 20 times what the average working person made. Today, it's 300 times.
Yeah.
If wages had kept up with CEO pay, today the minimum wage would be over $100 an hour. And in my view, working people have been left behind. They have been left behind terribly by Republicans, and they've been left behind terribly by Democrats.
Yeah.
And my mission in life is to to bring working people into the fold so that they really have a say in their work, meaning in their work, and a share in the profits.
It's amazing. So, what did you want to be in the sixth grade? What was your dream life?
In the sixth grade, I think I was crazy. I think I wanted to be a psychiatrist.
Okay. That's not crazy. That's the antithesis of it. You wanted to get into psychology. So, how did you get here? Tell me, take me back to where you were born and raised. What were the seeds of
So
this?
I was born in the San Francisco Bay Area and raised there. And when I graduated from high school in 1967, it was the summer of love.
Yeah.
And I was captivated by the Grateful Dead. But I hitchhiked across the country and went to Wesleyan University. And my claim to fame there was that I was the first person in the class of 71 to drop out. And I went on this long back to the land odyssey. And during that time, I got passionate about building and design. And it was completely seat of the pants, Joe. I had no idea what I was doing, but um, it became this very exciting company that is now 50 years old and which I have now passed on to the second generation after sharing the ownership in 1987. And so it was one of these things, is one of these careers that was everything was a dream come true, but it never got dreamed. It, I had no idea where this was going.
Yeah. So, who's been that inspirational force for you to do all of this work? Who's been that hero?
Well, I guess my biggest hero is Bill McKibben. You know who that is?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I see this guy who 40 years ago, Bill McKibben wrote The End of Nature, and I read this book and I went, this is so gloomy. Like there's no optimism here. And I was very disappointed in it. And then he must have been too. He was, because the next book he wrote was called Hope, Human and Wild. And it was examples of places in the world where things have gone right in an environmental sense, in a political sense, in a social sense, in a cultural sense. And so it was so inspiring to me how he found the good in what clearly wasn't, and how he parlayed that into a life of activism and science at once.
That's amazing. So, let me ask you this. If you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, that does business well, that does it right, takes care of their employees, does it in the right way, who would that be?
I just met 60 of them.
Okay.
During this book journey, I um, I did interviews with about 60 different people who I thought um, were leading the way in this approach to business. And I don't know who the next one I want to meet is, but man, oh man, it was really amazing because many of these people I had crossed paths with over time in my career, but many I hadn't. They were new to me. Everybody was incredibly responsive. And I was expecting to interview about 20, 25 people, but everybody I talked to said, "Oh my God, you got to talk to so and so." And so one thing led to another. And what was really great about it is that these were all Zoom calls. I recorded them. They were transcribed with AI. And what I learned from that is that I didn't have to think, I didn't have to remember in these conversations. I didn't have to take notes. I didn't have to worry about losing something. So I could actually be in the conversations. And then I had it all preserved and I could go through and find the gems and cull them out. So it was a really amazing process.
So, the being successful in business takes risk. When you look at the arc of your career, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
I think the biggest risk was in 1987 when I was about 12 years into this business, and two very close friends who had been with me from the very beginning. And um, this whole business was quite familial. I mean, it was it was super collaborative. People were friends and we were having a good time. Anyway, they came to me and they said, "We've been talking to each other. We've decided that we don't want to take the usual route and go out and start our own businesses. We want to stay here for our careers. But an hourly wage is just not enough. We need more of a stake." And at that moment, I could have, I could have made them minor partners or something like that. But I thought, well, if we do our job well, um, this will happen over and over again. Couldn't we imagine a system that would welcome people in over time as owners? And um, through a great good stroke of fortune, I did not have to imagine it. I stumbled across the worker co-op, of which there were about less than a dozen in the US at that time. And by the way, all of those are still in existence 40 years later and thriving. Um, Not that that always happens with worker co-ops, but these early ones did very well. Um, so the big risk was, so I decided to do that and share ownership. And the big risk was this thing that I was mostly responsible for building, this thing that I loved. And with decision making spread out, what if it turned into something I didn't love anymore? And I had to confront that. It was a huge risk, I think. And actually the whole process at times, it felt like I was dragging on the reins of a runaway horse, like oh my God, here we go. It turned out that not that I knew what I was doing, I really didn't, but it was the smartest thing I ever did.
Wow. So let me ask you this: how do you balance all of this? Or you have to take care of yourself. You have yourself, your family, you have your business, you have everything that you're doing. What gets you up every day and allows you to do this at the highest possible level?
Well, when I was in business for, so I no longer have any connection to South Mountain Company, except that I see people um, but when I was in business, I felt when I would wake up in the morning, it felt like there was a powerful magnet dragging me out of bed. I would leap out of bed every day to go to work there. And I loved the people. I loved the risks, which we took all the time. We never knew what we were doing. We were always reinventing and trying new things. So that just kept me going. And it's interesting because um, what I'm doing now that I'm retired from that has the same characteristics in that I really don't, I'm providing a service that I don't really know how to provide competently. I'm learning as I go and building the road as I travel along it. So that's what keeps me going is new learning all
Yeah,
the time. Yeah,
absolutely.
that's it.
Yeah, I dig it. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've accumulated over the years, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
I would say think long term. Don't ever let what's happening in the moment drag you down. If you keep with your values all the way, you will come through and you will come through to the place that you want to come through to if you just keep that long-term focus. I don't know if that's good advice, but
That's great advice. It really is. It's wonderful advice because I think that is kind of the thing about youth is that you're just living in the moment. There's more of
right.
a, and you don't
Yeah.
think about things like health and finances until you get to the point where you're confronted with it. It's kind of like, anybody that deals with maladies in their life, they don't think about it until it's personal. So if you could have that sage advice. So let me ask you this if you walked into a room of everybody that knew you as a businessman and you could swim through that crowd and go up to a podium and you could tell them one fun thing about you, a fun story, something that would humanize you and show you in a little different light, what story, what would you tell them?
Um, I I would probably tell this this story of getting to this, this very elite school, Wesleyan, and finding that I couldn't sit in a classroom. There was too much happening out there in the world. And so I didn't even make it to Christmas, but I did have this little VW bug. And and I said, I'm going to drive across the country to Colorado and spend the winter teaching skiing. And that little VW bug had no heat. So I learned along the way how to drive with a blanket wrapped around my feet.
Wow.
And I just wanted to get out there on the road to Colorado to a place I loved.
That reminded me when I was a teenager, I don't know how this happened, but I didn't have brakes on my bike. So I used to
Uh-huh.
stop with my shoe and my
On your
shoe,
bicycle?
yeah. So my
Yeah,
shoe always had that little indentation.
right.
But it's those things, the grit. And for some reason, I just went to Colorado last September and we went up to the Stanley and did whiskey tasting in the basement. And I was
Oh,
just
nice.
thinking about Jack Nicholson driving in the beginning of the movie and that VW Bug to Colorado.
In 5 easy pieces, was it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. That's the one where he orders he he wants some toast and they won't like oh, I can't remember how it went. Do you
Yeah,
remember this?
I
It was
do.
a great scene.
Yeah, yeah. I totally know what you're talking about. But all
Yeah.
of that came popping into my head. So let me ask you this. We've mentioned Colorado, San Francisco, Boston, Costa Rica, New Mexico, and all these wonderful places. Of all of the places that you've traveled to on this planet, what was one of the most unexpectedly magical places that just captivated you?
I would say that Savannah, Georgia was a place, um, kind of this. Have you ever been there?
I haven't.
So it's an amazing city. It's like the Paris of the US. It's
Wow.
it's beautiful, and there are just parks everywhere, these incredible live oaks with all this weeping moss. Um, and it's also it's a city. Here's what it is. There's a school in Savannah called the Savannah College of Art and Design, SCAD, and it has no campus. It's in buildings all over the city,
Wow.
and those students are roaming around all the time, and they are like the spirit of that city.
Wow.
And I thought Savannah, Georgia, yeah, I've heard it's a nice place, but Georgia, I don't know. Anyway, I loved it.
That's wonderful. Did you get into the boiled peanut thing?
No, but we ate peanuts.
Okay. Yeah, I when I saw that for the first time, and I think I was in Georgia because I scaved up by Georgia at one point, driving
Yeah.
back to Kansas City, and I was like, "Why are these peanuts wet?" And just had no idea. Because in Kansas City, when they get wet, you throw them away.
Yeah.
So
Did you grow up in Kansas City?
yeah, I've been here my whole life. My dad was born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island, came and got in the military and got stationed here, fell in love, and here we are. And at various points, I've tried to escape and get out, but there's been something like the magnet metaphor of
Yeah,
what you talk
yeah.
about. It's
Well, my wife um, was born in Kansas City and lived there until she was, um, you know, maybe 6 or 7,
okay.
and hadn't really been back there. So on the way out cross country. We stopped in KC, and
It
it's got a great feeling to it.
it does. It's grown up a lot. It really has over the years. It's grown into this beyond the Chiefs and the championships,
Yeah.
just as an arts and cultural place.
Yeah.
Just it's great, you know.
Well, on this trip across country and back, we ended up, it ended up being a tour of small American cities.
Yeah.
And they have become so vital,
Yeah.
from Pittsburgh to Oklahoma City to Raleigh, all of these cities, Kansas City, they're very alive, don't you
They
think?
are. They are.
Yeah.
I went to Oklahoma City last year. We went down and saw a game, and then we went back down, and I went to that downtown area, and it's totally built up because I went there in the late
Right?
90s, and it was
Yeah.
like there was nothing. And now they got
Yeah.
a ballpark, and they got the river walk, and they got,
Yeah.
but yeah, that you're totally right, the vitality. Um, and that's amazing to drive cross country. I've never done that, but that has to be an overwhelmingly satisfying thing when you finally go from one coast and arrive on the other.
I love driving across this country. So in my 20s, we were crisscrossing back and forth from Vermont to California to Oregon to British Columbia back. And I hadn't done it in about 30 years. And I thought that, well, maybe, the kind of massive homogenization that's gone on in this country, maybe it won't be so much fun like it used to be. It was fabulous. The cultural differences, this country has every landscape.
Yeah,
It's just amazing to traverse this country and get that
absolutely.
whole.
Yeah, it certainly is. So, of this very esteemed life you've had with so many things that have happened, accomplishments and evolution, what are you the proudest of?
I have to say that I have learned over time that kindness is the one thing in this world that really plays well, accomplishes things. Um, so I feel very happy with that. Um, that that I can give, whether it's to my grandkids, whether it's to people that work for me, it's whether it's to people that I look up to. Um, Kindness is the prevailing quality that I treasure the most.
Yeah, well said. So, at the end of the day, John, everyone has a perception of you family, friends, clients, everyone that reads your book, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I think I'm still that kid who was 21 and wanted to change the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have changed one iota. Don't know if I've changed the world at all. Probably not. But I'm still that same guy.
You know, my show engineer for my jazz radio show, we were talking last night, and I did my 900th show, which was fun. It was kind of nostalgic.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of a celebration. And at one point he just kind of stopped and said, "You realize in 10 years I'm going to be 81." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Because when we get together, we just horse around. We're young. We don't age doesn't come into it. So when I hear that, it's
That
like
is so how I feel at the age of 75. I feel like I'm still a kid.
that's
Yeah.
it. And that's manifest destiny because at the end of the day that feeling is going to permeate your bones and be who you
Yeah.
are, you know.
Yeah.
Um
I have to check out your jazz show. So
yeah,
is there jazz artists that you love the best or a type of jazz?
the world of jazz. So I wanted to get into sports broadcasting and I segued out of it. And I've met a lot of people over time. The jazz community, they are the best humans on the planet. They are the ones in Cloud City and Empire Strikes Back. They're sitting up there looking down and they just reverberate at a different energy level, man. They have this sage, almost like godlike quality, but they're
Yeah.
human. They're just
Yeah.
they're doing it for the music and they're creating wondrous sounds. I have a soft spot in my heart for the bebop world. My only son Miles, is named for obvious reasons.
Oh God, that. Me too. I'm with you. And we used to go to this club in New York in the 70s called Slugs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
we would see all of those characters there, and it was amazing.
Those cats will talk to me about slugs, and they get misty eyed because those old play because it's all about the hangman. I mean, it's one
Yeah,
thing to get the crowd going, but it's the hang and slugs and like the Vanguard and Birdland and all those places
yeah,
there.
yeah,
It's like that's
yeah.
it. So, so if anyone wants to reach out, they want to delve into your world further. What's the best way to do that?
Abrams Angel with two L's.com.
Okay.
They'll find it all there. Abrams Angel, two L's on the angel.com. And that's a great place to start. I'd love it for anybody that wants to sign up for my blog there. You'll hear from me.
I love it.
And, and I can't wait for this book to come out to share it with people.
Absolutely. So I will have everything in the show notes. So in honor of opening day, I got to know, have you been to opening day?
I have
Where'd you go?
Fenway Park.
Okay. How was it?
It was fab. It was one of the best days. The Red Sox lost 13-2, but that was okay because it was
Yeah.
opening day.
That's it. I've never been to one. I don't know how I have. I've been such a baseball fan my whole life, but
Yeah.
I always hear. I had a good friend of mine, very close friend, told me like last year was just a gas that I never had. He was like, it is a feeling that's like every World Series, every playoff game, every spring training, every moment of magic in sport is just jam crammed into that one day.
Because everybody knows that what we hope is going to happen is going to happen. All the possibilities are
Yep.
there on open
That's
day,
it.
right?
That's it. And everybody's happy. Just
World Series next stop.
that's it. That's how it works. Hey, John, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. So great to run into you. I loved it.
Thank you, Joe. You are a great person to talk to. I've really enjoyed it.
This has
Thank
been
you
wonderful.
so much.
Me too. Ditto. I totally appreciate it. Safe travels. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Onward.
Take care. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.